stop what you are doing. Because what happened in the sky on Friday the 13th was not random, it was not a coincidence. And if you felt something shift this week without being able to explain why, this video is going to tell you exactly what that was. March 13th, 2026. Mars collided with the North Node of Destiny at 8:56 p.m. Eastern. And if you do not understand what that means for your life right now, you need to keep watching. Let me back up and explain what we are actually dealing with here, because there are a few moving pieces, and I want you to understand the full picture before we get into what it means for your signs specifically. Mars is the planet of action, drive, desire, courage, and forward motion. It is the part of the astrological story that says yes, that gets off the fence. That stops deliberating and starts moving. Mars does not wait for perfect conditions. It does not ask permission. It commits. The North Node is something different. It is not a planet. It is a mathematical point, the place where the moon's orbit crosses the ecliptic on its way northward. In astrology, the North Node represents the direction of collective evolution. It is the point the sky is asking all of us to grow toward, the thing we are collectively meant to be working through and moving toward in this chapter of history. It carries a quality of fate, not in the sense of something locked and predetermined, but in the sense of something deeply aligned. When you move toward the North Node, things tend to click, things tend to open. It feels like momentum rather than resistance. And right now, the North Node is in Pisces, which means the direction of collective growth is Piscean. Compassion, surrender, spiritual depth, intuition over logic. The courage to act from feeling rather than strategy. The willingness to trust something you cannot fully explain. When Mars meets the North Node, that is not a casual transit. That is a moment where personal drive and collective destiny fuse. Where what you want and what you are meant to do stop feeling like two separate questions. Where the urgency you have been feeling in your body stops being anxiety and starts being direction. And they did this on Friday the 13th, in Pisces, during Mercury retrograde, 4 days after Jupiter turned direct in Cancer. With Saturn and Neptune sitting together in the early degrees of Aries, rewriting what an entirely new era looks like. This is not a quiet week in the sky. This is the week where everything that has been quietly building since January gets handed a match. If this is already landing for you, leave a like and subscribe. I do these every week, and this week especially. You want to stay tuned in. Drop. I feel the pull in the comments, so I know who is already sensing what this transit is kicking up. Alright, let me get into the actual mechanics of what happened and what it means. Here is what makes this particular Mars and North Node conjunction different from any other time these two have met. Mars is in Pisces, and that matters enormously. Mars in Pisces is not Mars in its natural home. Mars rules Aries and traditionally Scorpio. It likes to know what it wants, point itself at the target, and go. It prefers clarity of direction, clean lines of action, obvious enemies to defeat or obstacles to overcome. In Pisces, Mars does not get any of that. Pisces is a sign of dissolution, of fog, of the ocean rather than the road. It is a sign where things merge and blend rather than separating cleanly, where the path is not visible, only the current. So Mars in Pisces is the warrior who has been asked to navigate water, the initiator who has been asked to lead through intuition rather than strategy, the thing that drives you forward that has been stripped of its usual maps and left with only a feeling. And that feeling is, keep going, in a direction that makes sense emotionally, spiritually, soulfully, even if it cannot be fully argued in a spreadsheet. What that has produced in March, particularly for anyone paying attention to their internal life, is a specific kind of urgency that feels murky and clear at the same time. Like you know something is supposed to move. You can feel it. You have been feeling it for days, maybe longer. But the thing you are supposed to move toward is not presenting itself as a 5-step plan with bullet points. It is presenting itself as a pull, an inclination, a recurring sense that this, whatever this is for you personally, is the direction. That is Mars in Pisces. That is the energy that was already running underneath this entire first half of March. And then the North Node met it on Friday. At the degree of karmic momentum, at the degree of fated action, and pressed the accelerator. When I say the North Node pressed the accelerator, here is what I mean concretely. The North Node is always associated with increase, with amplification, with the thing the universe keeps calling you toward even when you keep looking the other way. In Pisces, that increase has been oriented toward depth, toward trust, toward the willingness to let go of control and let something larger than your individual strategy guide your decisions. Mars meeting that point means the Piscean call to trust is no longer a gentle invitation. It is a summons. The part of you that has been waiting for a better moment, a clearer sign, more certainty, more information, more whatever you tell yourself you need before you are ready, that part of you just got exactly what it needed, whether it knows it yet or not. The sign was Friday the 13th. The sign was Mars conjunct the North Node. The sign was the sky pointing directly at the thing you already know you need to do and saying now. And here is what makes this feel historical rather than just weekly transit talk. The last time Mars and the North Node came together in Pisces was not recent. These conjunctions happen roughly every 1.5 to 2 years, but the sign placement rotates. For this particular combination of planet and node in this particular sign to recur takes considerably longer. The themes of Piscean destiny, of spiritually motivated action, of the kind of courage that moves from feeling rather than certainty, have been building across years, not just weeks. March 13th did not create a new direction. It crystallized one that has been forming for a long time. The question Friday asked was not, "Where do you want to go?" You already know where you want to go. The question Friday asked was, "Are you going to let yourself go there? Or are you going to keep waiting to feel ready?" I want to spend some time on the North Node in Pisces because I think it is one of the most underexplained astrological placements of this entire nodal cycle, and understanding it changes how you make sense of what happened on Friday and what comes after. The lunar node shifted into Pisces and Virgo in January of 2025. That means for the better part of 2 years, the axis of collective karma has been running along a Pisces and Virgo polarity. Virgo is the south node, the place of release, the habits and patterns we are being asked to let go of. Pisces is the north node, the direction of growth, the quality of experience we are collectively being invited to develop. Virgo's south node says, you have spent a long time being very good at analyzing things, at optimizing, at fixing, at adjusting the details until everything is technically correct. You have been very good at criticism, at lists, at working hard and expecting results proportional to the effort. And some of that has served you, but you have also used it as a defense. You have used the need for more information as a reason not to commit. You have used perfectionism as a reason not to start. You have made staying in your head a way of avoiding your gut. Pisces North Node says, the next version of you trusts the gut, acts on feeling, commits before having all the answers, practices the kind of faith that does not mean blind optimism but means a willingness to step onto the bridge before you can see the other side, moves from alignment rather than from a perfect plan. Now here is what is interesting about Mars conjuncting the North Node at this specific moment. Mercury has been retrograde in Pisces since February 26th. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is already a fundamentally Piscean experience. The analytical mind going backward, losing its grip, having to navigate by feeling. The messages that get through during a Mercury retrograde in Pisces are not logical messages. They are not arguments or plans, they are recognitions, feelings of knowing that arrive sideways rather than head-on. So you have spent the better part of 3 weeks in a mental environment that is fundamentally non-linear. And then Mars conjuncts the North Node in that same sign and says, now act on what that non-linear knowing has been showing you. This is worth sitting with. Because for a lot of people, the Mercury retrograde in Pisces has been frustrating in a very specific way. Not because things are going wrong, but because you cannot quite nail down exactly what you are supposed to do or exactly how to do it. The direction keeps feeling clear and then fuzzy. Clear and then fuzzy. You almost land on the right answer and then it slides sideways again. That is Pisces asking you to trust before you can fully articulate, and Mars meeting the North Node is what happens when the trust period ends and the action period begins. Not because you have all the answers now, because it is time to move with the knowing you have, even if it is not yet complete. Jupiter turned direct in Cancer on March 10th, 4 days before this conjunction. Jupiter direct in Cancer is warm and generous and abundantly emotional in an outward-facing way. It has been retrograde since November of 2025, meaning for almost 5 months, whatever Jupiter was building for you, whatever growth was available in the areas Jupiter governs in your chart, that growth was internal, reflective. It was the kind of growth you could feel but not yet show anyone. Jupiter direct means the showing begins. The thing that has been developing inside you starts finding external expression. And when Mars meets the North Node 4 days later, the external expression gets direction. It gets urgency. It gets the fire of fated action added to the warmth of Jupiter's generosity. This is the combination that moves things, not randomly or chaotically, but with the sense of something finally clicking into place that you have been waiting on for longer than you want to admit. Let me move through all 12 signs here because the house that Pisces falls in tells you specifically where Mars conjuncting the North Node is lighting up your personal destiny. And I want you to know exactly where to look. Aries, your ruler, Mars met the North Node in your 12th house. The 12th house is the house of hidden things, of what operates below the surface, of solitude and spiritual depth. This fated action is not public. It is not a career move or a social announcement. It is something you do quietly, possibly just for yourself, possibly in service of something larger than your personal ambition. The urge you have been feeling, the thing pulling at you in the quiet hours, that is your North Node calling. A Pisces 12th house, Mars conjunction says the most important move you make right now happens in private. You know what it is. Stop waiting for someone else to validate. Taurus, Pisces sits in your 11th house. Friends, community, collective purpose, the future you are building alongside other people. The fated action point for you is relational but not romantic. It is about who you are choosing to show up for, and more importantly, who is choosing to show up for you. Mars conjunct the North Node here says something about your social circle, your sense of belonging. Your vision of the future you want to move toward together with others is asking for action. A reaching out, a commitment to a group or cause, a conversation you have been putting off with someone you genuinely care about. The hesitation has cost you more than moving would. Gemini, Pisces rules your 10th house of career, public reputation, and life direction. This is one of the most outward-facing placements for this transit. For you, Friday's conjunction was a direct hit in the professional sphere. What you are meant to do, not just what pays the bills, but what you are actually here to contribute, got louder on the 13th. If there has been a project, a creative direction, a professional pivot, a role you have been considering, something that aligns with the more compassionate and soulful side of what you could offer the world, that thing is lit up right now. The North Node in your career house does not ask you to be careful. It asks you to be visible. Cancer, Pisces is your 9th house. Philosophy, higher education, long-distance travel, the beliefs that organize how you understand your life. For Cancer, this conjunction is about expanding your worldview in a way that feels like destiny rather than ambition. Something you believe, or something you want to learn, or somewhere you want to go, is being called forward with unusual urgency. The fated action here might be enrolling in something, committing to a course of study, making plans that used to feel like daydreams. Your 9th house is ready. Jupiter just turned direct in your 1st house, your identity, which means you are in a chapter of profound self-expansion. The North Node in your 9th is asking you to meet that expansion with a directional choice. Leo, Pisces falls in your 8th house. Shared resources, intimacy, transformation, the things we hold in common with other people, including debt, inheritance, and the kind of psychological territory that most people prefer to avoid. Mars conjunct the North Node here is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. The 8th house is where we are asked to look at what we have been refusing to look at. A financial entanglement, an emotional dynamic, a pattern that has been operating beneath the surface of a close relationship. The fated action for Leo is courageous honesty about something that has been easier to manage than to actually address. The North Node says the managing era is over, the addressing era is now. Virgo, Pisces is your 7th house. Relationships, partnerships, one-to-one, connections, the agreements you make with other people. And this is particularly striking for Virgo because the South Node has been in your sign, meaning you have spent this entire nodal cycle releasing the patterns that belong to your old self, the self that overfunctioned, overanalyzed, overprepared, overgave. The North Node in your 7th is asking you to receive, to let someone else show up for you, to enter into partnership without needing to control every variable. Mars conjunct that North Node on Friday is a direct address. The action being called for in your chart is the act of allowing, of saying yes, of trusting someone enough to let them be part of what you are building. Libra, Pisces rules your 6th house of daily rhythms, health, work, and service. The fated action here is practical but soulful. The 6th house with the North Node conjunction says, the way you spend your ordinary days is either aligned with your evolution or running against it, and it is time to be honest about which one. Mars here brings drive to your routines, urgency to your health, fire to your daily work. If something in your daily structure has been quietly wrong for a long time, Friday was the day the signal got loud enough to hear clearly. The action being asked of you might be as simple as changing one daily habit. It might be as significant as leaving a job that no longer fits who you are becoming. Either way, it belongs to the 6th house, the place of how you actually live, not how you say you want to live. Scorpio, Pisces falls in your 5th house. Creativity, joy, romance, children, play, self-expression. The North Node in your 5th house, lit up by Mars, is one of the warmest placements in this entire conjunction. The fated action for Scorpio is deeply personal. It is about letting yourself want things that feel good, about giving yourself permission to create, to pursue a romantic connection, to follow what lights you up, without immediately analyzing whether it is practical or worth the risk. Scorpio has a tendency to protect itself by staying in the analysis phase indefinitely. Mars conjunct the North Node in your 5th house says, stop analyzing the joy and just go have it. The desire you have been guarding is the direction. Follow it. Sagittarius, Pisces rules your 4th house. Home, family, roots, emotional foundations, the private inner world that most people never see. This is a deep and personal transit. The fated action for Sagittarius is not external. It is not a journey or an adventure, both of which Sagittarius can use to avoid the quieter work of building something emotionally stable. Mars conjunct the North Node in your 4th house is asking you to tend to something at the root level, a family relationship that needs honest attention, a living situation that no longer reflects who you are, an old wound from your home of origin that has been quietly running your present life. The destiny available to you right now is found not out in the world, but at the center of your own story. Capricorn, Pisces sits in your 3rd house. Communication, immediate environment, siblings, neighbors, local community, short trips, the way you think and express yourself day to day. The fated action for Capricorn is a conversation, possibly more than one. The North Node in your 3rd house, charged by Mars, says there is something you have been not quite saying, not quite putting into words, keeping vague when it needs to be specific, keeping to yourself when it needs to be spoken. Mars brings urgency to that silence and breaks it. The conversation that happens in this window, whether you initiate it or someone initiates it with you, has the quality of something that was always going to happen. You are not creating it, You are finally letting it arrive. Aquarius, Pisces falls in your second house. Money, values, self-worth, the material resources you work with, and more fundamentally, the inner sense of what you deserve. The fated action for Aquarius is a values confrontation. Not dramatic, not necessarily financial, but real. Mars conjunct the North Node in your second house asks, are the choices you are making with your time, your money, your energy, your daily decisions actually aligned with what you say you value? The North Node says the next phase of your growth requires your material life and your stated values to stop being in conflict. Friday handed you the clarity. What you do with it is the action being asked for. Pisces, this one is yours. Mars conjunct the North Node in your first house is the most direct hit of this entire conjunction. The first house is identity, physical presence, the way you lead with yourself, the way you show up before anyone knows anything else about you. Mars and the North Node meeting in your sign, your house, is not subtle. It is a direct command to the self. Show up. Be seen. Take up the space that belongs to you. For Pisces, there has often been a tendency to dissolve into the needs of others, to stay soft and yielding as a form of self-protection. Mars in your first house conjunct the North Node says that era is over. The version of you that is supposed to lead your own life is ready. The question is whether you are ready to let that version step forward. Now, there is something important to address about the timing of all of this, because it changes how the Mars and North Node conjunction actually shows up in your life, and I think a lot of people are going to miss this if they are not paying attention. Mercury is still retrograde. It has been retrograde in Pisces since February 26th, and it does not station direct until March 20th. So, at the moment of this enormous fated action conjunction on the 13th, the planet that governs how information moves, how messages are delivered, how thoughts get from one person to another, that planet is moving backward. In a water sign, in the most intuitive and non-linear sign in the zodiac. This is significant because it means the fated action of Mars conjunct the North Node is not necessarily going to arrive in your inbox with a clear subject line. It is not going to show up as a calendar notification or a logical sequence of events that makes obvious sense when you trace it backward. In Pisces, during Mercury retrograde, the messages that matter most travel by feel, by sensation, by the kind of knowing that does not arrive through thinking. So if you woke up on Friday or over the weekend and something felt different, something shifted in your gut about a situation you have been carrying, something clarified that you cannot quite put into words, but you definitely felt, that is the Mars and North Node conjunction delivering its message through the channel that Mercury retrograde in Pisces provides. The channel of felt understanding rather than verbal explanation. And here is why that matters practically, going forward. Mercury stations direct on March 20th. Same day the Sun enters Aries for the astrological new year. So you have about a week, the week from March 14th through March 20th, where the understanding that arrived in felt form during Friday's conjunction starts to become articulable, starts to find words, starts to convert from a gut sense into something you can actually say out loud or write down or act on in the physical world. The week you are in right now is the translation week, the week where intuition becomes intention, where the fated action you felt on Friday starts finding the shape it will take once Mercury is moving forward again and the astrological new year begins on the 20th. And sitting close to all of this is the building Mercury and Mars conjunction, which becomes exact around March 15th. Mercury retrograde meeting Mars in Pisces is a compressed, urgent, somewhat turbulent meeting of thought and action in a water sign. It can feel like your mind and your drive are colliding, like you desperately want to act on something and the words keep slipping away before you can use them, like the plan keeps dissolving right before you can finalize it. That is not failure. That is Pisces asking you to act without having every word of the action fully scripted first. The Mars and North Node conjunction said move, Mercury conjunct Mars in retrograde says move in the direction your gut knows, even if you cannot fully explain why yet. The explanation comes after the 20th. The action belongs to now. I keep coming back to something that I think is the larger context for all of this, because I do not want to talk about Mars and the North Node in isolation, when there is something bigger happening in the background that makes this conjunction carry even more weight than it would on its own. Saturn and Neptune are in Aries. Together, Saturn entered Aries in February of this year. Neptune entered Aries in March of 2025. They made their exact conjunction at 0 degrees and 45 minutes of Aries on February 20th, 2026, less than a month ago, and they are still close enough to each other that for most of March, any planet entering Aries is effectively touching the entire Saturn and Neptune conjunction as a unit. Venus has been in Aries since March 6th and has already conjuncted both of them separately, first Neptune on the 7th and then Saturn on the 8th. So the week leading into Friday's Mars and North Node conjunction was already saturated with Aries energy channel through Venus, touching both the structure builder and the dreamer. What does Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries actually mean? Here is the version that I keep coming back to. Saturn is what is real, what holds up over time, what has actual structural integrity. Neptune is what we dream, what we imagine, what we project onto situations before we know them clearly. When they are in tension, reality and dream are at war with each other, and you cannot tell which is which. When they are in conjunction, there is a negotiation, an integration. The dream has to find its feet in the real world, or the real world has to be reimagined in light of something you once thought was only a dream. In Aries, the sign of first fire, of initiation, of courage that acts before it calculates, this conjunction is asking an entire generation to build something new, not the inherited version of their lives, not the structure given to them by their family or their culture or their fear, something that is genuinely theirs, shaped by both the vision they carry and the reality of what they are willing to actually do. Mars conjunct the North Node on Friday arrived inside that larger frame. The fated action being called from all 12 signs exists within a moment where the entire collective is being asked to stop choosing between their dreams and their reality and start building one from the material of the other. This is not small. This is not a single week's transit. This is the signature of a new chapter, and Friday was one of the loudest moments in that chapter so far. The new moon in Pisces on March 18th is the next beat. Late Pisces, conjunct Saturn and Neptune in early Aries, sextile, Uranus in Taurus. That new moon is going to feel like the first breath of the new era. The first moment where the seeds planted by all of this Pisces energy, all of this fated, intuitive trust, before you know movement, actually get planted in the ground of the Aries era that is arriving with the equinox. And then March 20th, Mercury direct, Sun into Aries, the astrological new year, the fog lifts, the analytical mind comes back online. The things you have been understanding through feeling start becoming things you can say clearly and act on precisely. You are not in the fog because something is wrong. You are in the fog because the next version of your life is being built in Pisces before it gets to live in Aries. The building is almost done. Friday accelerated the final stage of it. Here is what I want to leave you with, because I think this is the part that matters most and that I see most often missed in conversations about fated transits and destined action. The word fate is heavy. It makes people think something is going to happen to them rather than through them. It makes people think the universe is going to override their choices and deliver a conclusion they had no part in writing. And that is not how Mars conjunct the North Node works. It is not how the North Node works at all. The North Node is not a door that opens automatically. It is a door that is unlocked. Whether you walk through it is still yours to decide. What the conjunction on Friday did was make the door impossible to miss. It put a light above it. It made the pull toward it undeniable to anyone paying attention. but the walk through the door is still the choice, still the act, still the thing that has to be chosen, consciously, by you. And the reason I keep saying fated action rather than just fate is because Mars is in this conjunction. Mars is always the planet of personal agency. It is always the planet of I decide, I move. I choose this direction and I go. Mars does not observe. It participates. Mars conjunct the North Node means destiny moves through participation, not through passive waiting. So the encouragement I want to give you, the thing I genuinely believe about this transit and this week, is this. The thing you have been waiting to feel ready for is not something you will feel ready for in advance. You will feel ready for it by doing it. The courage that this moment is asking for is not the kind that waits for fear to disappear. It is the kind that moves alongside fear, that says I do not have all the answers and I'm going anyway. That follows the pull, even when following the pull does not come with a guarantee attached. In Pisces, the courage to act always comes before the clarity of the plan. That is not a bug in this transit. It is the whole point of the transit. Pisces teaches us that the clearest understanding of a thing often comes from moving toward it rather than from analyzing it from a distance. The picture resolves when you get closer. The direction becomes obvious when you start walking. Jupiter is direct in Cancer. That is warmth and support and emotional generosity flowing outward now, rather than turning inward. That is the universe saying the foundation is strong enough. You built something good during the retrograde. It can hold what you are about to place on top of it. Mercury stations direct on the 20th. That is the analytical mind coming back into full function, ready to help you articulate and plan what you are right now just beginning to feel. There, words are coming. The clarity is coming. The step-by-step plan is going to be available to you in a week. And in between now and then, Mars and the North Node have already met, have already set the directional pull in motion, have already handed you the felt understanding of which way your destiny is pointing, even if your conscious mind is still catching up. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are not failing to hear the signal. The signal is exactly what you have been feeling. That pull, that urgency, that recurring sense that something in your life needs to move in a direction you already know, that is not wishful thinking. That is the conjunction speaking. That is the North Node saying, this is the direction. That is Mars saying, now. You have got this. Not because everything is certain, not because the outcome is guaranteed, not because the path is clear from start to finish, but because the part of you that knows which direction to face is already awake, has been awake honestly for a while. Friday just made it impossible to pretend otherwise. Trust what you felt on the 13th, even if you cannot fully explain it yet. The explanation is on its way. The movement belongs to right now. If this landed, leave a like and subscribe, and drop I feel the pull in the comments below. I want to see who is already moving in the direction Friday pointed you toward. Tell me your rising sign down there too. I actually read every single one. March 20th is 6 days out, and the astrological new year arriving alongside Mercury direct is going to feel like a genuine gear shift after everything we have been through in Pisces season. I will be covering it. Take care of yourselves through the rest of this retrograde. You are almost at the turn.